If at first you don't succeed, try again. That appears to be the motto for Trump's legal teams as they continue their desperate attempts to try just about anything at this point to get the numerous cases against their client thrown out, including citing presidential immunity, the charges being too vague, the legality of the special counsel statute, selective and vindictive prosecution. And as we saw this morning in Georgia, their attempts to throw out the whole Fulton County case on the grounds of the First Amendment.
I don't think there's any question that statements, comments, speech, expressive conduct that deals with campaigning or elections has always been found to be at the zenith of protected speech. The only reason it becomes unprotected, in the state's opinion, is because they call it false.
Well, they were false, but that is not the only reason why it's not protected by the First Amendment. Here is the prosecution's response.
It's not just that they were false. It's not that the defendant has been hauled into a courtroom because the prosecution doesn't like what he said. These statements are part of criminal conduct that is larger than just the false statement on its own.
Mind you, the same First Amendment challenges were made by two of Trump's former co-defendants in that case, and they were unsuccessful. And Trump's lawyers tried the same argument in the federal January 6th case, which also failed. Once again, this brings us back to what has been Trump's real goal, which is to delay the start of any of the trials until after the November election. Rinse, repeat. However, the New York hush money trial is presently the only one that he has failed to delay any further, with the judge saying it will start on tax day, April 15th. And as a result of having the audacity to not let Trump play his delay games anymore, Judge Juan Marchand is facing Trump's revolting wrath. Trump is also continuing to target the judge's daughter once again, including just in the last few hours in a post that names her. And while neither the judge nor his family are covered under the judge's recently imposed gag order on the trial, we could see that coverage expanded. Joining me now is Andrew Weissmann, former FBI general counsel, former senior member of the Mueller probe, and MSNBC legal analyst. Andrew, I cease to be able to be surprised, except that Donald Trump is now literally making up a story about Judge Marchand's daughter, posting about it, railing about it, naming her by name, and there's still nothing anyone can do to stop it?
Well, it actually is something that could be stopped. I mean, there could be the gag order could apply to both the judge and the judge's family. And this is one where, as a matter of grace, the judges have not imposed the gag order as to themselves.
Right.
It reminds me when Amy Berman Jackson, Roger Stone, had posted a picture with crosshairs next to her, and she said you couldn't find another photo that didn't have that there. And judges, I think, bend over backwards. But it'll be interesting to see whether Judge Marchand does expands it. But I just would like to step back to, it is true that you see this and you think it's just Donald Trump. It's just Donald Trump, more of the same. It is really important not to just get to normalize this.
Yes,
and
amen.
not to, I mean, so many people talk about sort of predicting what would a Trump 2.0 administration be, and should we really think he's going to be a dictator, and what will happen? And my response to that is, you can look right now at what he's doing and saying. And for people who are fair-minded, I would say, what do you say about somebody who attacks the daughter of a judge?
That's right.
Is there no depth to which she will not, descend? I mean, it is so important to not get inured to what this is.
Yeah. And I mean, the bottom line is the reason that he's attacking Judge Marchand and his family is the same reason he attacks Jack Smith. They won't stop prosecuting him. And he can't delay the trial anymore. He's found a way to even delay the Georgia trial, which is, I never thought they'd figure out a way, but they literally went after Fani Willis's relationship that had nothing to do with the case. That did delay it. This is the one case he can't stop. He knows it's coming, and therefore he's trying to personally destroy this man's family.
And just remember what we're talking about. He will be given his day in court.
Yes.
This is not, he's not being nailed against a cross.
Although he does claim he's Jesus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He is doing the whole, I am God, I am suffering for you.
Yeah.
He is being given what every defendant is given, and as you said, more so.
Much more.
And he is getting, for the sense that the state has its day in court, simultaneously, he has his day in court.
That's right.
He will be able to defend himself. He has excellent counsel. He will be able to cross-examine, put on witnesses.
He could be acquitted.
Exactly. And so this is really somebody who's saying, you know what? I am not acting the way somebody who is innocent who wants to clear his name. He is saying, I'd rather have nobody find out what the facts are because I'd rather engage in spin. He is getting due process in our court system, and he's basically saying, I'm running against all that.
The reality is that it is not just the defendant who has a right to a speedy trial. The American people, we are the plaintiff who also has a right to a speedy trial. And what he's saying is, you can't try me at all.
Absolutely.
And that's dictator talk.
Absolutely. And by the way, you know who has said that it is the public who has a right to a speedy trial? In the latest, the most recent Supreme Court case on that was decided and written.
Don't tell me Scalia.
Almost. Justice Alito.
Oh, come on.
And so the point is, all of us, everyone who is watching this, has a right to this public trial. The trial that is finally going to happen on April 15th, where everybody gets their day in court. Just to be clear, the state and the defendant is something that we are all entitled to.
And what Donald Trump's fundamental argument is, and they're using all these tactics, they're getting more and more creative. It's the First Amendment. It doesn't almost matter what the individual arguments are at this point. It's just to throw an appeal in or throw some other way to get more adjudication. And then the system, the grinding system, gives them the other opportunity to do it. But the bottom line is that he does not feel that any judge, state or federal, has the right to put him on trial for anything.
Right. Well, that is autocracy versus the rule of law.
It's a dictator.
And I mean, that is what is on the ballot. I mean, that extreme, the reason you have Liz Cheney saying, you know, I can get over policy differences because this is about democracy and what it means to have a rule of law country. And not. And
the reality is folks like me who I fundamentally disagree with everything Liz Cheney believes in. I'm on Team Cheney at this point. Absolutely. Because she and I agree on something fundamental, that this is a democracy where every person, if you commit a crime, you have the right to your day in court. And then if you are innocent, you have the right to be acquitted. Donald Trump has not gotten to the point where he can accept that he even must stand before the court. And the personal attacks on this judge's daughter was nothing to do. She's not putting him on trial. Right. At this point, let's just say they added him to the gag order. We go back to the same question I've asked you this 400 times. Could they put him in jail? And they won't, right?
The answer is you could, and they won't. But just to bring it back to your first segment, you know, there's a reason that you are not seeing George Bush campaigning for Donald Trump. I mean, it goes to this idea of what is fundamentally at stake, that it is not normal. You do not have traditional Republicans viewing this as normal. The reason you have you know, I'm sure both of us were not sitting there going, Liz Cheney is who we believe in terms of a policy.
Not at all.
But she, her father, the president that her father was a vice president for, all actually operate within a construct that we agree on, because that's what it means to be American. And we can have lots and lots of differences within that system. And that's fine. That's what we signed up for.
That's right.
We did not sign up for this.
We sure didn't. Andrew Weissmann, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Let's just hope we make it through January 1st in one piece as a country. After the devastating collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore this week, many conservative voices insisted that it could not have been just an accident. CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp suggested it was caused by drug-addled workers. Conspiracy theory advocate Lara Logan claimed it was a terrorist attack. And Fox Business anchor and granddaughter of Italian immigrants, Maria Bartiromo, said the problem could be migration.
The ship involved in the collapse of the bridge is 948 feet long, called the Dolly, a Singaporean-flagged container. But, of course, you've been talking a lot about the potential for wrongdoing or potential for foul play, given the wide-open border.
These grotesque accusations are part of a rightward shift in America, where the majority of our problems are laid at the feet of people Republicans claim have broken into the country like burglars to steal jobs and money from the real Americans. What they fail to acknowledge is that foreign labor has fueled the American economy for generations. Millions of young African men and women kidnapped and transported to this country and forced to become America's most efficient laborers. They were sold as property, bred like cattle, and resettled on forced labor camps with the single task of planting and picking cotton, cultivating rice and other crops, herding cattle, and building the grand homes and iconic buildings that define America. The profits from cotton alone propelled the U.S. into one of the leading economies in the world by the 19th century and made the South America's most prosperous region until the Civil War, after which the wealth of the country shifted north to the railroad men and the industrialists. With that came the 15,000 forgotten Chinese migrants who helped build the western portion of America's transcontinental railroad in the late 1800s. They were paid less than American workers and lived in tents, while white workers were given accommodations in train cars. These people immigrated to the country because there was a labor shortage that threatened the railroad's completion. They helped make it happen. In the East, it was roughly 10,000 Irish immigrants who helped build the eastern section of that railroad. Irish immigrants also helped build a number of America's key canals, like the Erie Canal, because few locals would work for the low wages that the newly arrived Irish would. During World War II, this country created an agreement called the Bracero Program that sought labor from millions of Mexican men to work legally in the United States on short-term labor contracts. These agreements addressed a national agricultural labor shortage brought on by the Great Migration of black plantation workers out of the South. But cheap labor kept and continues to keep being reproduced through migration. This country was literally built by unwilling and willing migrant hands, and they have always been met with disdain. We used their labor and promptly targeted them with stereotypes and anti-migration laws to stop them bringing their wives and families. There was the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first significant law restricting immigration into the United States. There was the Know Nothing Party, which made anti-Irish immigration its main agenda. And then there was Eisenhower's racist mass deportation program, offensively called Operation Wetback, which forcibly deported nearly 2 million immigrants, a program that Donald Trump has promised to resurrect if he's elected, which could literally cripple the economy. Some estimate that it would cost the federal government nearly $900 billion in lost revenue over 10 years and would immediately reduce the nation's gross domestic product. Whether you like it or not, immigrants continue to build America and make it run. According to the according to the restaurant industry, an estimated 2 million workers are foreign-born. Immigrants comprise a significant majority of farm workers, and many of them are undocumented. According to the National Association of Home Builders, more than 31% of the people working in construction trades are immigrants. Baltimore Harbor is a perfect encapsulation of that American ethos. It is a massive business hub, bringing together people from a diversity of countries, like the victims of the bridge collapse, who were all immigrants from Mexico and other parts of Central America, and who came to this country for a chance at a better life. On Tuesday morning, Alejandro Hernandez Fuentes, Dorlian Castillo Cabrera, Miguel Luna, Jose Lopez, Maynor Suazo, and a sixth unidentified colleague plunged to their deaths while fixing potholes so Americans could drive to work, ship your packages, and deliver your food. After the break, we'll talk more about who these men were and what they sacrificed for our economy.
No pude contenerme al ver, saber que ese monstruo de hierro está atrapado, mi hermano. No es fácil.
Él es el que nos daba la fuerza para todo. Solo le pido a Dios que le encuentre. Eso es todo lo que pedimos.
Those were the siblings of Maynor Suazo, who was about to turn 39. They are also victims of Tuesday's bridge collapse. Suazo and the other 5 who died were fathers, husbands, brothers, and cousins. They were part of Baltimore's vibrant fabric. A total of 8 people were working a grueling overnight shift, repairing potholes, and were reportedly on a break when the bridge collapsed. Incredibly, 2 of the 8 workers survived the plunge and were rescued. 1 was hospitalized and 1 refused treatment and walked away. Their colleagues made the greatest sacrifice. Joining me now is Gustavo Torres, the executive director of CASA, an advocacy organization for immigrants and working class people in Maryland. 2 of the construction crew members were active with the group. Gustavo, thank you so much for being here. And I know you've been in touch with some of the families. Tell me about the men who died on that ship.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, Miguel Luna was from El Salvador, left at 6:30 p.m. Monday evening for work, and since has not come home. He's a husband, a father of 3, and has called Maryland his home for over 19 years. He loves soccer and helped the community. Manuel Suazo Sandoval, a second CASA member impacted by this strategy, migrated from Honduras over 17 years ago. And he, alongside with his brother Carlos, were active member of CASA as well. I remember Carlos describing a minor. He said, like, you know, he was always so full of joy and brought so much humor to our family. He was a husband and a father of 2. And actually, you know, his family was getting up for his birthday celebration in April 27. This is the extraordinary people. This is the extraordinary immigrants that are in Maryland and all around the nation, making a great difference to this great country.
And, you know, talk about why these men come here, because there's this really, to me, despicable, racist and ugly attempt on the right to paint these men as essentially burglars who are coming in, stealing into the country to commit crimes. What you're showing me, and what all of us experience who've ever had any construction project done anywhere that we've lived or worked, know that the men who come here from Central America, from these countries, they're leaving sometimes hellholes, but they come here and they are incredibly hardworking, devoted to their families, good people. Why do people make the arduous journey to come to this country, in your experience, as you deal with immigrants who come and work in the United States?
Well, it's 2 or 3 different things. Number one is the violence. The situation in our country is very, very challenging, where we have civil rights during the 80s, during the 90s, or even right now. So that is one reason. The second reason is, of course, poverty.
Yeah.
And number 3, right now, that is increasing and increasing, is the issue of the environment. You know, because people don't have a place where they can produce things in their country of origin. So that is kind of the 3 reasons why we see thousands and thousands of men and women and families arriving to this country, and are going to continue it, because that is the reality of immigration for many, many, many years.
And the thing is that the jobs that a lot of the time these migrants, men and women, are doing are really arduous work, whether it's in the agricultural industry, in the meat packing industry. But just talk to me about the way that they improve the economy, because no one, who's going to get on that bridge in the middle of the night and repair those potholes? These guys, they're willing to do it.
You know, these construction workers are absolutely essential. They work on the night shift to repair bridges and roads that millions of people use every day to get to work through the cities and towns. You know, Minor and Miguel are just 2 examples of the millions of people who are doing that. Around 3 million immigrants doing that every single day, building and protecting our communities. I just want to say something that is very, very important, which is that both of them, as many millions of people, Miguel and Minor, are building bridges to connect communities, not building walls to divide them. Today and always, we honor them and their sacrifice.
Gustavo Torres, thank you so much for being here and allowing us to know these families better. Please pass along our deepest condolences to these families. God bless them, and we thank them for the work that they do to make our country better. Thank you. And to my viewers, if you want to learn more about how you can help the families of the victims, please go to our blog, www.msnbc.com/readoutblog.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.